everyone. I look a little bit messy because I'm actually in studio to edit because I got a lot of recording done. But I just had to make sure that I hop on here to bring you another Rush reaction because it's been too long. And it is mind blowing how I went from not knowing about Rush much at all to being mind blown by their mathematician in music. And music, as I like to call them, they are my music mathematicians, to getting the t shirt and meeting so many of you who are Rush fans. It's been so interesting and fun. So I am just overdue with going further down the rabbit hole, and I want to check out Subdivisions with you. I'm trying to work my way through various songs that have resonated with you guys over the years. I've done the 2112 album, side A and B. Make sure to go check out those. Or just to explore the catalog that is my... Okay. That red car in the end as the camera was zooming out from the Subdivisions made me think of red barchetta, and I wonder if that was a little Easter egg or just a random chord that happened to be there. Guys, I have so much respect for these guys, and it's beautiful to me because shows like Stranger Things that have been going viral and have been reviving the 80s to this next generation have been intriguing. For one, because I think sci-fi and fantasy and action resonates with a lot of people and gets a lot of attention. But also, it did something by being in such a nostalgic setting that it's really brought generations together. Nostalgia to us 80s babies, to the 70s babies whose youth and young adult life took place in the 80s, and to a now generation who is being exposed to trends, styles, hairstyles, clothing, music that is of their parents' or grandparents' generation, depending on how young we're talking, and is yet being presented in a new package. So shows like Stranger Things that bring these worlds together, I think, end up being attractive to multiple generations and therefore possibly so successful, in addition to being well made, great actors, and a cool plot and whatnot. But it's just awesome when you see worlds come together. And in that show, Stranger Things, and I'll tell you where I'm going with this in a second, it presents a lot of these 80s babies, some of them cool and hip, yes, but a lot of them just highly intelligent nerds, simple kids. And it puts the humanity back into where media sometimes will present certain eras through a certain lens. You might think it was all glam, and then you find this nerdy looking 80s kid that's just a regular person like you and me, and it touches us in a different way than some glamorous pop star from the 80s who may have felt out of reach. And with Rush, I say all this to say, with Rush, I too am seeing that it's so much more about these nerdy musicians who are just amazing at what they do versus it's all about the rock and roll and the glam. And I think there's something about that really resonates with us because it puts the authenticity back in music. And in a world right now where things are rampant from autotune and AI to having a hard time what you can believe and feeling like the music industry curates, you have this band who put themselves on the map in a way that is so authentic and relatable to your average person. It's not just all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's not just all about a performance of the handsome men with their luscious hair making all the women scream, right? This is authentic, and this is almost like your regular 80s nerd kid that is so highly intelligent that starts playing music and rocks everybody's socks off because you thought this guy was just into music. You thought this girl was just all about, I don't know, walking around with her braces and her hairstyle and not knowing what's going on. It presents a generation and an era in a very relatable and personal and approachable way. While Rush's music feels very overwhelming in the sense that it's so high level mathematics, they still bring us art in a very personal way. They're not up here creating this rift of, oh, we're just so amazing. And, look at my luscious locks. And, all of you can just scream and faint in my presence. And it's all about entertainment. This is art. And I mentioned Stranger Things because it just blended, in my opinion, those worlds well, the modern age with the 80s, bringing that past flair into a modern day generation and doing so through relatable characters. And real people, real life stories, real life struggles. And I think that's beautiful. And as I'm listening to Rush, I'm thinking just that. These remind me almost of these highly intelligent nerds who are not out here making all the girls faint. Quite frankly, several of you have told me that a lot of concerts, you could barely see a lot of girls. It was a lot of guys coming to support this band because this really wasn't this sex appeal vibe like, say, Led Zeppelin had, right? Where amazing musicians as well, don't get me wrong. A lot of it was the performance and the entertainment and lyrics that, had people, having to, say it's getting hot in here. So you have a band that is almost like this unsuspecting nerdy creator artist that comes on the map and then rocks everybody's socks off. And I say that because growing up, I think I had even stereotypes about 70s, 80s music where I thought a lot of these rock bands may sound similar. And as I'm exploring and I've been opening my mind, you can just hear the distinction, not only in the various styles and subgenres of that same time or time frame, but even in the voice. Even in the timbre of his voice, I find such a unique flair. It does very much remind me of the 70s, 80s, that feeling, that texture of voice that a lot of voices had. Geddy Lee's voice just has this unique, distinct, I called it in German Wiedererkennungswert. You can recognize it. There's something so intriguing about his timbre that is so unique and unlike any other voice I know. And that's not to say that it's better than every other voice out there or anything like that. There are so many different unique voices that are amazing and beautiful. But he has this very distinct value that just adds to the art. The bass in this song, I often focus on the drums, and I'm mind blown by the time signature switches and the constant surprise element of what this band can do. And I often focus on Geddy Lee and his distinct voice. The bass lines in this thing were off the charts. I mean, so good. And what's so crazy is I feel like you have to listen to these tracks again and again to really, lyrics even aside for a second. We'll talk about that in a moment. Don't go anywhere. Subscribe. Even the composition, you have to listen multiple times I feel like you keep finding something new. And I say this is really art because it makes me think of composers like Joseph Haydn, who were trying new things, pioneering in a way with things like his Surprise Symphony or his Toy Symphony, where elements were integrated that were not conventional, or elements were brought in parts of the composition where it was unsuspected to get a different reaction from his possibly almost sleeping crowd, right? This feeling of, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to get a different response. I'm going to pioneer. And you see this in different eras and different music genres. And I feel like Rush is doing this here. These are not just artists that are playing catchy rock tunes. Their lyrics are profound and so poetic, the kind of songwriting that I aspire to, I wish I could. And even in my songwriting journey, which is far from this level, there is that tension sometimes of not making I won't call it a mistake because it's art and art is subjective, but not being too easy on the literary art and just using regular words to convey an emotion, but daring to play with words and linguistic elements that are like this Überraschungsei, this surprise egg you can open, where I may use a word, but it's meant as a double entendre, or we're using expressions here that are double, triple, quadruple entendres and alliterations, similes, metaphors, where songwriting, which sometimes nowadays, depending on the band, of course, has become just a simple rhyme scheme, right? You can put something into ChatGPT and you get a decent sounding lyric that may sound pretty and put in a couple of poetic words and rhyme, but it lacks substance. It lacks art. And with Rush songwriting, I see an element of art, even in their songwriting, that is so intricate. Like I said, I wish I could write like that because it paints a story that allows us to follow along. Like when you read a good book, you can picture things, you can imagine what you're reading about. There's descriptive language, adjectives. You had wordsmithery, as I call it, and literary art. But it's so intricate and playful that it really allows for various interpretations. And that makes good songwriting, and that is something that AI can't convey because this contains the musical art, the life's experience, and the emotion of someone that has walked life, that has been a fellow traveler on this planet Earth. And they put this art into music, and they convey just how much they wrestle with things that plague us all. Even here, and we'll talk about the lyrics in a second and the psychology behind it, this idea of talking about subdivisions and yet talking about so much more than just a group and an alignment of houses. This is so much deeper than that. And it makes me think these are such artists who thought about life, who pondered their environment and themselves, who questioned and used critical thinking and put it in a song. And that's so beautiful with music, where you can have statement pieces that call out a corrupt government, or you can have statement pieces that convey a personal ailment. You can have statement pieces that communicate empathy towards another and pull another person in to speak life into that person. You can have a song that wrestles with mortality and existential questions and theories and feelings. all through music. And Rush continuously does that. And it's funny because ever so often I think you've heard me say in some of my Rush reactions, I'm tempted to say, oh, this is my latest favorite. I think this is my favorite. And with this one, same thing. I'm listening to Subdivisions going, maybe this is the new one. They constantly bring you something where you can't decide. You can't put your finger on, well, that's why this is great. And this is the favorite. And this is the best one they did. Because there's just so much diversity. Alex Lifeson on the guitar, the electric guitar, the bringing in so much funk and so much life. I find it similar to dishes where you have ingredients, but it's not as amazing as what it could be until you bring them together and you layer them in certain ways. From a delicious cake that needs the layering just so, to the right amount of sugar, or a delicious dish where you place things. It's not just about what you used to cook. It's also how you cooked it and for how long and just how much seasoning you used and when you placed said seasoning so the meat or the vegetables can absorb it. It's about how you position it on a plate. A lot of things in life are not just one or the other. There's nuance and there's so much to be said. And I find that here with this music, that it becomes this beautiful piece of art because they have their ingredients. You have your bass, your drums, your e-guitar, you have the voice, you have lyrics, but it all comes together just at the right time, with surprises and switches, with layers and elements that are unique, that make us a beautiful dish that we get to enjoy. And man, what an honor to be alive and experience this. Anyways, I'm going off on a little bit of a rant. I don't want to bore you guys. But Rush just keeps surprising me, and I feel like they are just these crazy intelligent nerds that make amazing music. And I think that's another thing that I find so intriguing about them. They're not out here just to do sex, drugs, and rock and roll and entertain us all. They are here to bring us art. That's how I feel. Sprawling on the fringes of the city in geometric order, an insulated border in between the bright lights and the far unlit unknown. Beautiful alliteration, the unlit unknown. That's deep in and of itself. We'll talk about that in a second. They're painting a picture here that makes me, knowing the title of the song is Subdivisions, it immediately makes me think of a subdivision. The music video, really well done. Also for its time, wow. You see subdivisions in cars driving in an order, everyone going through the motion. Then it switches to elements of people going to school and the next generation being indoctrinated and going through the same battle as generations have before, of trying to fit in and trying to learn and trying to explore who you are and trying to win the game of life, which may have been beautifully presented through just playing a video game. Total 80s feeling, which that in of itself can be nostalgic to many of us. That taps into your memories, your identity, the way your sense of self was shaped. So this song is beyond just a cool hit. This is personal for many of you. But it paints this picture of a subdivision sprawling on the fringes, the beautiful lingo, sprawling, not just sitting, not just right there on the city limits, sprawling. Sprawling to me makes me think of a word that indicates some type of life. I think of sprawling. I think of either something positive like a nature, the way it's sprawling. It makes me think of some critters or something that's moving in a rapid pace, something that I may or may not want. Sprawling on the fringes of the city, the outskirts of the city. Here, while I'm thinking subdivisions and the way that neighborhoods are structured, it creates a duality that is not inclusive. On the fringes, when somebody's on the fringes of something, on the outskirts, doesn't feel quite good if everyone's on the in. And it from the get-go paints a picture that makes me think of the dynamics in life, socially, within ourselves, in a culture, in a school, in a business, where we try to belong and we also want to be our own self. So we're on the fringes here of the city. In geometric order, I see a duality here, a contrasting lingo from something sprawling that almost sounds chaotic and hard to control to a geometric order that speaks of absolute control and structure. An insulated border, right? Insulated border. Border is usually meant to perhaps keep something out, but insulated also may imply we're trying to keep something in. It's creating a picture of very much who's on the out, who's on the in, a division in between the bright lights and the far unlit unknown. That alliteration, unlit unknown, is beautiful to me because when something is unlit unknown, it is unfamiliar, and that is scary to people. And that's one of the reasons why often we find the you're in, you're out mindset and this biologically tribal tendency we have as people is because the unknown is scary to us, so we'd rather stick to what we know. And it's so hard to sometimes question and dare to be that light that lights the unlit unknown. Anyways, a lot of imagery being painted here. Growing up, it all seemed so one-sided. a lot of lingo that is fitting to the idea of a subdivision and a neighborhood where there's borders, where there is geometric order. But this is a person reflecting on how they were, dare I say, indoctrinated, how they experienced life, one-sided. Opinions all provided. You're told what to think, perhaps. The future pre-decided, right? You're told what you're going to do. You're growing up in this subdivision where there's not a lot of room for creativity and for freedom. And I do find this throughout Rush, various works of Rush, that they often deal with the idea of free will, questioning our human desire to be in the limelight, questioning the system, and freedom of creativity and versus control, as we see in Rush 2112. A lot of conversation about freedom of speech, freedom of creativity, freedom to be, to exist, which is powerful on a psychological level and beautifully conveyed through their art. The future pre-decided, detached, and subdivided in the mass production zone. So while this whole idea that's being painted is that of a subdivision of everyone in their nice little houses and their nice little order, the topic I'm drawing from so far is calling out a system where we're all told what to think. We're all in a mass production zone, going through the motion. That's often what the criticism is towards public school, right? Meant to create a bunch of workers and employees, followers, soldiers. We're supposed to go through the motion, graduate, get a good job, now pay off that college debt that you've acquired, and it's mass production zone. And I see here a criticism of, an addressing of, a questioning of, an important, in my opinion, questioning of a system where everything is pre-decided and placed in a certain order. The way we think, this could be a call on, and the reason why I love this is because this could be taken different ways. This could be a criticism of religion and how there's lines in geometric order and mass production of sorts. This could be calling out the governmental structures and society in general. They are so philosophical. They are asking questions through their music that Greek philosophers of old and before have asked and tried to understand. Nowhere is the dreamer or the misfit so alone. The dreamer, the person who's different, the misfit, those who don't fit into these geometric orders and subdivisions are so alone in places like this. Subdivisions in the high school halls. And I love this because we're going from looking, even the video portraying this bird's eye view, close up and back, and bird's eye view of the neighborhood. And even lyrically now, we're going, and even musically, the composition took us on this journey, right? Zooming in and out, for lack of a better word, into various elements of the composition. And now lyrically doing the same thing. I mean, this is so multi-layered. It's fascinating. Even lyrically now, diving into a deeper element of the conversation. We're looking at it from a bird's eye view. We're looking at the subdivision, the categories we find in societies, in religion and politics and in sociology. We see this tendency of people to be tribal and boxed in, to be told what to do, to follow along, and the misfits, the dreamers, they don't fit in. And now we're zooming in as he's reflecting on how things felt to him growing up. He seems to be that misfit because he felt like things were so one-sided. This is a band that is perhaps the misfit and the dreamer, and they're communicating this through their art. And now we're zooming into just where a lot of this stems from. The school system, the young generation already being told how to be divided into these subdivisions from early on. And we're zooming into the high school halls, which is relatable to many of us, where we have seen bullying and cliques and division. It is not just adults who are picking the side between left and right in politics, or who are Erica versus Candace. This is not just people on social media, adults who are all in their little fancy subdivisions. In their mind, perhaps, not even literally. This is even in the school system. You find cliques. Those are the nerdy kids. There are the hip hoppers and the rappers. Here's the metalheads. Here's the popular ones. Here's the high school, the cheerleading team, and the football team, right? These are stereotypes that people have experienced and that are portrayed in a lot of movies, especially American movies. In the shopping malls, in the high school halls. Now we're seeing that this division we're talking about is actually so much deeper and ingrained in the systems. Conform or be cast out. In the basement bars, in the backs of cars, be cool or be cast out. Now it's one-on-one situations in the back of someone's car. You either be cool, you either go along with doing whatever you're supposed to be doing with this person, or you're cast out. The theme here, constant dividing into subcategories of who you should or shouldn't be. Any escape might help to smooth the unattractive truth, but the suburbs have no charms to soothe the restless dreams of youth. There's also a duality here being created of saying there is a youth, a restless youth, who longs to break free out of that, to play video games, to break out of this game, out of this maze. I love how they showed the 80s video game and a lot of these games that were maze-like, where you're ping-ponging around, being thrown left and right, just trying to desperately get out of this system. Any escape might help to smooth the unattractive truth. We escape, we run away from that unattractive truth, that is that we're being divided, that is that this is all just a game. Is it rigged? Is it a subdivision we're stuck in and told to conform to? How is it that 40 plus years ago, this song is still so relevant? And did they know, did they have a feeling that 40 years from now, this song would still be so relevant? Drawn like moths, we drift into the city, the timeless old attraction, cruising for the action, lit up like a firefly, just to feel the living night. So interesting, right? Painting a beautiful, very poetic picture here. But again, addressing this idea of we escape to not have to deal with the truth. We keep ourselves distracted. We go to the city to hang out with our friends. Still relevant as ever, still true as ever. Now you just add the phone and social media that we are drawn to, the light that lights up like fireflies. Well, some will sell their dreams for small desires or lose the race to rats, get caught in ticking traps. I love the poetry here. Oh my gosh. Start to dream of somewhere to relax their restless flight. Fitting to the idea of a firefly, the flight, that search for something, somewhere out of a memory of lighted streets on quiet nights. Subdivisions, and then it goes back to speaking about how they're in the high school halls, the shopping malls, and the basement bars and back of cars. Any escape might help to smooth the unattractive truth, but the suburbs have no charms to soothe the restless dreams of youth. The suburbs have no charms to soothe. The suburbs, these divisions, cannot soothe the restless dreams of youth. Not only can these subdivisions soothe the youth that longs for more, that wants to get out of their old little town, which is often people's experience. I want to see the world. I want to do something more. I don't just want to follow in my father's little business. I don't want to stay in this little town. That's something a lot of youth do experience as they emancipate and become who they're trying to become. But it's also true on a psychological level that those who are dreamers, those who have youth inside, no matter of their age, they long to break out, be free, dream, and the subdivisions can't soothe that. There's no boxes that can soothe that longing within us, and maybe it requires us listening to that and asking questions and saying, what is this restlessness in me? Where is this coming from? Questioning, critical thinking skills, more important than ever in a generation that is so divided. Rush, once again, blowing my mind. Subscribe for more. Talk to me. What do you think about this song? How do you interpret the lyrics? If you had to give me your top 3 things that you love most about Rush, what would those be? 1, 2, 3. Let me know in the comments, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next ride. Ayo!